Right back here with Howard Beck from The Ringer on the Good Word with Goodwill podcast. Howard, we're not going to be able to talk about Big Slim for much longer after the next month because the Spurs stink. And maybe they stink by design, right? I'm not sure. But Big Vic, I feel like he's wrapped up the Rookie of the Year award. I don't know if it's unanimous. I don't know if it's close, whatever it's going to be. But be that as it may, the man is averaging nearly 4 blocks a game out of the All-Star break. Like, he should be in the defensive, all-defense conversation, but he probably won't be because the Spurs are so bad, and how effective are you defensively if your team stinks? I totally get that. I'm just saying watch the dude every night. And when I look at Howard, the way that they're set up, they're going to have probably another top 5 pick, and they're going to have cap space. But the question is, A, do we trust that Greg Popovich knows how to put a team together in today's NBA when you look at the Devin Vassell's and Keldon Johnsons and Jeremy Sohans and how they all kind of don't seem to fit next to this dude?
Oh, man. It's a really interesting conversation with the Spurs, right? Because they have decades under Pop and R.C. Buford. And, R.C.'s not in that basketball role anymore. He's more of this kind of overseeing business role and whatever else. Brian Wright's the GM, and like Pop is still team president. But the Pop and R.C. Buford partnership that has consistently found talent late in the draft, international talent, undervalued talent on other guys' rosters. I still default to, I trust the Spurs to figure this out. And I know there's a lot more doubts floating around about that the last few years than in the past. And there's even now people like, a lot more doubts now about, like, has Pop lost touch with even just how to coach? I think that particular line is maybe being a little overstated. But the Spurs didn't have a North Star for the last several years, right? Mm-hmm, and they were not assured, all conspiracy theories aside, they were not assured of getting Wemby, for that matter. So it's not like they could have prepared for, we're going to have Wemby, so we got to start building the infrastructure. No, they just like, all right, well, Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, whoever. We're just getting dudes who we think have some upside, or who we can develop, or who we're going to run with for a little bit until we figure out what our foundation is. Well, now it's clear. Like, you have your North Star. You have your foundation. You have Victor Wembanyama. So now is the moment when you can actually sit here and say, what do we need around him and how do we get it? Can we get it? So I think the judgments are a little harsh and a little premature toward the Spurs, in that this is the first moment they've had in years where you could say, now we know what we're about. And if we're going to judge them, let's judge them after this offseason, right? Let's see what they do in the draft. Let's see what they do in July. Let's see what they do in free agency and trades. But I will say, like, there is a considerable amount of pressure on them because of the times we live in, right? There was always pressure on teams who, if you get the top pick, and if the top pick actually happens to be a LeBron James caliber player, or, a Shaquille O'Neal caliber player, the pressure's there immediately to build around them and to get it right quickly. But I feel like more so now, just because of the way the league is these days, and the just 24/7 chatter from folks like us and fans and everybody else. The question is, like, how much do they actually need? Like, if they just got one stud co-star, whoever that may be, does everybody else fall into place in their roles because now you don't need quite as much Devin Vassell or as much Keldon Johnson or whoever, or Jeremy Sohan? Do they need more than that? Like, how big is the lift this summer? And I haven't drilled that deep on it, and I'm not sure. Right, and as you and I both know, sometimes one player makes all the difference in the world, right?
Yes. I think, I don't necessarily group all three of those guys together. Like, we just tend to look at Sohan and Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell like all one and the same. And they're not. They function completely different. Vassell's the guy that they have signed long-term and for big money. So clearly they believe in him individually. I think his extension kicks in next year. So they got him signed up for the next 5 years. But any contract can be traded. Keldon Johnson, he's got, I think, 2 more years after this one, 3 more years after this one, 19, 17, and 17. And Sohan is on a smaller deal. The Trae Young stuff is really going to be fascinating this summer because of where the Hawks are, where Trae Young is. And, you've heard through the grapevine, I'm sure you've heard, like I've heard, the Trae Young to San Antonio rumors. I'm not sure if that's the guy because we just look at the Spurs and say they need someone to get him the ball, and these dudes don't get him. I've never seen a group of guys or a team that says this guy is the future, and he's streaking down the floor, and I'm going to look him off so I can dribble through cones. I've never seen any shit like this before. And like this guy is everything that we need and everything that we want. We need to hitch our wagon to him. No. It's time for me to cook. All right. Howard, I will never understand that. Right. But Trey Jones, Vic, Devin Vassell, they have a pretty good net rating together. Like you said, you add another draft pick. I think Brian Wright, who's their GM, who's young, who's bright, really got a lot of foresight, really patient, really has a vision for them there. But of course, things have to line up. Players have to want to come to San Antonio. Or if not, you have to draft the right guys. You have to be in position to trade the right guys. You have to keep your powder dry in free agency while still kind of building a reasonably competitive team around Big Vic. But Howard, you said something about the 24-hour news cycle and us idiots talking about this stuff 24/7. Howard, he's going to be in his second year next year. That clock isn't going to start ticking for a long time. Any discussion about, oh, Victor isn't happy. Hey, y'all, I don't know if you guys know how this works. There's 4 years on a rookie deal, and then there's a rookie extension that everybody takes. Why? Because nobody has never not taken the rookie extension. It's designed
that way. That's the point of it. Keep guys with their teams.
Look, even if you say Anthony Davis is the last guy who left the small market to go somewhere big, he was in New Orleans for 7 years, which doesn't sound like a long time. But when you consider it in the context of Big Vic, that means the Spurs would have 6 years to get this right from this point on. Yeah. But I'm with you. I don't think the conversation right now is warranted. It kind of sickens me a little bit. And I do think that if there's a franchise that warrants a little bit of trust, I do think it's the Spurs.
Yeah. And real quick, like Wembanyama, like point noted about guys looking him off in transition. And there's probably like they could be using him better. His teammates, the entire organization could be using him better. Wembanyama is tied with Steph for the 6th highest usage rate in the NBA this season at 31.6%. So like he's doing plenty. Like he's doing a lot. His life could be easier and he could be even more weaponized and more efficient and more devastating with a better supporting cast, and especially with like an elite level playmaker of some sort in his vicinity. And I'm with you too, Vinny. Like, yes, the reality of the NBA is guys, even if things aren't great, you're with your team that drafts you usually for the first 7 years. That's that's half of a career, by the way. Like most careers are 15 years or less, and the average career is way lower than that. But for a star of his caliber, 7 years is a big chunk of your career. He will probably be there at least that long, if not his entire career. They do have time. When I say there's pressure and urgency, it's a lot of it is just about the discussion and about the pressure that amps up. It's not that I think he would force his way out in year 2 or 3. That's ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous. It's more just that you got to get it right, and you have a responsibility and an obligation that when you have a player who looks like he could be one of the most talented we've ever seen, get it right soon, quickly. Like make sure you're not putting an undue burden on him, and like don't put yourself, your fans, and him in a position where you're even having to like explain away what you did or didn't do. Like you want to start making the playoffs immediately. They don't have to be a contender immediately. You want to start making the playoffs soon.
And honestly, it's better for the NBA that we see more of Big Vic. That's just the bottom line of it. It's so much better that we see him in meaningful games and meaningful situations and marquee games, because we need to start transitioning to the next generation. Pretty much it. Right.